afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the choir room here at Christ Church United Methodist in downtown Charleston, West Virginia. My name is David Donathan, and I'm the minister of music here at the church, and it's my joy to welcome you to this midweek devotion this week. I have picked a special hymn for this week. Most of you probably know that this coming Sunday in the life of the church universal, we will be celebrating All Saints Sunday. The first Sunday in November is usually designated as All Saints Sunday. I believe All Saints Day is actually today, November 1st. But most churches celebrate All Saints Sunday on the Sunday closest to the actual All Saints Day. Some churches may have celebrated it last weekend. Here at Christ Church, we are celebrating All Saints Sunday this weekend. And it's a very special day in the life of our congregation because we will be remembering, I think now it's 14 people who have passed away since last year's All Saints Sunday. And one of those people that we will be remembering is our beloved Bishop William Boyd Grove. So I picked this hymn today because every time I played this hymn in a worship service and we sang it in a worship service, he was very quick to come up to me and say, "Now, I don't want you to forget that that hymn is about actual people that lived." And so I thought today would be the perfect day then to talk about this hymn and dive into a little bit of its history and its meaning. So the hymn was actually written in 1929 by a woman by the name of Lesbia Scott, who lived over in England. And after she married John Hopkins Jr., who was a naval officer, they had a couple children. And one day, one of the kids asked the question, "Mom, what is a saint?" Because Lesbia was a poet, and she was writing children's music all the time. And so one day, she said, one of the kids asked, "Mom, what's a saint?" So to answer that question, she created this 3-verse hymn. It was first printed in a book in England in 1920 later in the 1920s, called Everyday Hymns for Little Children in 1929. So that's the date of this particular hymn. And she had several hymns that she wrote for different instances. "Mom, what's a hymn for a picnic?" "Mom, what's a hymn for a foggy day?" Well, this particular day, one of the kids said, "Mom, what's a hymn about a saint?" So this particular song was created just out of a simple child's question. And so what I wanted to do is read through the verses of this hymn, and then we're going to talk about it a little bit. Like I said, this is one of my favorite All Saints celebration hymns. It's just a very simple song, but it's just very beautiful and very well written. The name of the tune is called Grand Isle, and that is named after an island in the middle of Lake Champlain in Vermont. There's a community there called Grand Isle, where the composer lived for a while. And so that's how this particular tune got its name. But in response to her children's question, "Mom, what is a saint?" this is what she wrote. And the song starts off, "I sing a song of the saints of God, patient and brave and true, who toiled and fought and lived and died for the Lord they loved and knew." And here come the references. "And one was a doctor, and one was a queen, and one was a shepherdess on the green." Now those are 3 specific references to 3 specific people according to Lesbia Scott and her family records. The first one where it says, "and one was a doctor," that is a reference to St. Luke. Of course, Luke wrote the book of Luke that we have in the Bible, and he was known as the great physician. And so, "and one was a doctor" is a reference to Luke, the writer of the gospel. The next one, "and one was a queen," this is a reference to Margaret, who was a queen of Scotland back from 1045 to 1093. And she devoted her life to prayer and action, feeding orphans, tending the poor, living simply. She advocated for enslaved prisoners and founded schools and hospitals and the restoration of monasteries. So that's the reference here to queen. So we have a reference to Luke, the doctor. We have a reference to queen, who was Queen Margaret. And then the third one was, and one was a shepherdess on the green. That is a reference to Joan of Arc. Because if you know the story of Joan of Arc, Joan was out in a field tending the sheep when she began to see visions of Christ. So in that very first verse, we have 3 historical references that are known as saints. And the first verse ends, and all of them saints of God, and I mean, God helping, to be one too. Okay? Then we jump to the second verse. They loved their Lord so dear, and his love made them strong. And they followed the right for Jesus' sake the whole of their good lives long. And here come 3 more references. And one was a soldier, and one was a priest, and one was slain by a fierce wild beast. And one was a soldier is a reference to a soldier by the name of Martin of Tours, who died in 397. He was born in an area to what is now called Hungary, but he grew up in Italy and became the beloved bishop of Tours, France. But early in his life, he was forced to be a Roman soldier in the army, but he was one of the first conscientious objectors and said that war was incompatible with the Christian faith. And there's a legend that says that at one point while he was a soldier riding on horseback, he came across a shivering beggar, and he took his very regal Roman cape and cut it in half with his sword and wrapped it around this shivering peasant. So one was a soldier is a reference to Martin of Tours. One was a priest is a reference to the great Anglican priest and poet John Donne, who lived back from 1573 to 1631. And after serving in Parliament, became an Anglican priest and was appointed the Dean of St. Paul's Cathedral in London. But he is most remembered, however, for his poetry. And the third one is, and one was slain by a fierce wild beast. And that is a reference to Ignatius of Antioch. According to legend, Ignatius of Antioch, who lived from 35 AD to 107 AD, may have been one of the little children who sat on Jesus' legs and Jesus' lap. We know for certain that he identified himself as a Christian long before it was acceptable, and he was instrumental in helping to develop the early Christian theology. But because he didn't bow to the Roman gods, he was elderly and frail at this point in his life, and they captured him. He didn't renounce his faith, so they threw him in the lion's pit. And that's the reference here, and one was slain by a fierce wild beast. So there's 6 references to historical figures, real historical figures, in this particular hymn. And the second verse ends, there's not any reason, not the least, why I shouldn't be one too. And then the third verse starts off, they live not only in ages past, these 6 references, there are hundreds of thousands still. The world is bright with the joyous saints who love to do Jesus' will. You can meet them in school, on the street, in the store, in the church, by the sea, in the house next door. They are all saints of God, whether rich or poor, and I mean to be one too. Now, like I mentioned earlier, Lesbia Scott was born and raised in England, and so this particular verse went through a little bit of modification when it came into a hymnal that was going to be used in the United States. So Lesbia's first text on this third verse read like this: you can meet them in school or in lanes or at sea, in a church or in trains or in shops or at tea. So those references would have been strictly British references at the time. Of course, she grew up in England, so when she's writing this hymn about her saints to her children, she's going to use local references. But when the hymnal appeared in our United Methodist hymnal in the 1980s, they changed the words a little bit without changing the meaning. So our hymnal reads, you can meet them in school, on the street, in the store, in the church, by the sea, in the house next door. They are all saints of God, whether rich or poor, and I mean to be one too. Now, as we go into this week of celebrating the saints on All Saints Sunday, this coming Sunday, or even if you are in an Anglican or Roman Catholic tradition and you are celebrating All Saints Day today or tomorrow or sometime, within the next couple of days, I want you to keep in mind not only giving thanks for the saints that may have gone before us, but keep in mind the saints that are in your lives today. I think all of us can name a person who, without their guidance, without their help, without their love and support, we probably wouldn't be where we are today or who we are today. I shared with you at the beginning of our time together that every time we sang this hymn in church, Bishop Grove was always quick to tell me, never forget that hymn talks about real people as well as the people that are living today. And so I can think of countless numbers of people that I would call saints that have been in my life for years and years and years. Some are still with us, some are not. But take some time this week to remember those people in your life who have been so important to you, those who have led you and guide you and helped you to become who you are today. And in the days and weeks ahead, as we lead into Thanksgiving, which is just a few weeks away, take time to thank God for those people and thank God that they had the opportunity to come into your life. Let's have a moment of prayer. Gracious God, thank you for this beautiful day. And help us to always remember the saints that are in our lives. You place them there. And so we thank you for giving them to us. In some instances, we've had to already give them back to you. And we celebrate those lives with unending joy and love. But to help us to also look for the saints that are here each and every day, all around us, so that we can truly be a witness to what your love is doing in the lives of those who love you. We ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen. Now I'm going to sing just a little bit of this song, the first verse. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next time.